Hey, my friends, we need to find out whether or not electric cars are worth it. Do they really work? Do they have a net benefit for the environment, or is it just BS? We're going to find out now. This is Craig Fitzgerald, who writes for. Tell them who you write
So
for.
I'm the automotive editor at Subaru Drive magazine, and I do a bunch of other work too. But that's my
Right.
primary gig now.
So have been an automotive writer for a long time, writing for bestride.com and
Yep,
even Hemmings back in the day, correct?
correct. Yep, Boston Globe, Haggerty, a whole bunch of different places.
So I naturally reached out to Craig to find out the answer to this question. And he supplied me with the answer, and I thought you should know the answer as well.
This is what we're gonna do.
Okay.
Oh, you go right ahead.
All right.
Sorry, I don't want to step on your show.
So here's the setup. I'm thinking, sometimes, I think, and I'm thinking, the electric cars, they don't use gasoline. That's cool, which means they're not using those fossil fuels. So that's cool. Electricity. And I say, wait a minute. Where's the electricity come from? Where are they making it? In some stinky coal-fired electric plant in Franklin, New Hampshire? Or, is it come from stinky, bad sources of electricity? I don't know. We need to find out the facts on this. So now, Greg, you go ahead.
So your hypothesis when you sent me an email last Wednesday, you presented this hypothesis and you said, I don't think people are getting the benefits that they think.
Did I say that, or did I just ask?
Yes,
I said, I
no.
don't think they are, or did I say, are they really?
I could probably, it's like, I'm going to paraphrase, but it's like, I have a feeling that people are not getting the benefit. And I was like, Bradley, we are going to talk about this because we know. So it's interesting because when people talk about EVs and, this comes up constantly. Like, the electricity's got to come from somewhere. It's coming from some dirty plant somewhere. We know exactly where the electricity is coming from. What you can't do is kind of give a national average of the CO2 emitted by your electric plant based on the amount of driving you do, because every state gets their electricity from somewhere else. So, for example, New Hampshire relies on nuclear for a big chunk of their power still. And then behind that, it's solar and wind. It's all renewable. So in New Hampshire, an EV driving, say, 12,000 miles a year is going to generate 952 pounds of CO2 emissions.
In one state, New Hampshire.
In one state, right. So if you go to West Virginia, where they still rely on coal primarily for their energy, it's going to be much higher. So that is going to be, according to the government, is going to be 6,200 pounds of CO2 emissions.
How much is it in New Hampshire? 940?
940. So it's a big difference. It's 6 times. But if you take West Virginia, which has to be one of the dirtiest states in the country, and compare it against an internal combustion engine, that internal combustion engine still, like even the cleanest ones, they generate 12,000 pounds of CO2 emissions. Yes.
So twice as much.
In the dirtiest state, you've got twice as much carbon.
Okay.
Emissions.
Very good.
Right?
Are there any? Go ahead.
So that's the thing, is like I think people walk into this with, and it's a fine hypothesis. Like, how do I know where my energy is coming from? Well, the interesting thing is you do know. And I sent you that link, it provides a ton of information about, what your energy breakdown is. So even places like they're kind of surprising to me, like Maine, for example, you're still well under the national average of, say 2,600 pounds of CO2 emissions. You're half of that in Maine because they rely on hydro, they rely on biomass, hardly any fossil fuels in their energy production at all. So it makes a big difference.
Okay, good.
Right.
Well, we still have a lot to talk about. This is a good opportunity to talk to doubters about climate change.
Yep.
And some will say, well, how do we know that it's the man-made? Well, here's how you know.
Yep.
If you take, say, a cubic yard of air, and then you add a set amount of carbon to that, you can measure the amount of temperature increase.
Right.
It's this amount, it's this temperature here with zero carbon or a minimum amount of carbon. We inject more carbon, more CO2, and nothing else has changed, no other variables.
Right.
And it gets this much warmer. You can measure that, and then you can extrapolate 1 cubic yard to the atmosphere. You can
Right.
do the math and see exactly how much warmer air gets when it has X amount of carbon in it. So the idea that we just don't know. Yes, of course, there may be other circumstances that are working as well.
Right.
But there's a finite and significant amount of climate change caused by a specific amount of carbon, the amount of carbon we put in the air. So there we go.
Right. And a lot of this, so I've been in this, you and I have been around for a while. I've been doing this for 25 years. I don't think there's anything in my career that has been more triggering to people than the existence of electric cars. The existence of, oh God.
I don't see why they care.
People
you can doubt
get mad about Mustang versus Camaro, right? And Chevy versus Ford. They get wound up about it, but it's generally pretty good natured. This is like something is being taken from me. The very existence of electric cars equals something is being taken.
And what do you suppose that is? Because that's an important thing to know.
More choice.
Freedom.
More choice has always been a positive for me, right? So that was always my problem before, 20, 25 years ago, is like, this is it. Like, we have cars that run on gas and diesel. That's it. And now it's like, you've got a million choices. You've got, gas, you've got diesel, you've got hybrids, plug-in hybrids, electric vehicles. You've got, hydrogen cars sort of coming. There's all kinds of things that are in the marketplace now that didn't exist. And to me, that's a positive. I think the negative was that people thought that, on a certain date, there weren't going to be any more internal combustion engines built. That was never going to be true. I don't know who anybody heard this from, but it was never going to be true. We were going to have to rely on internal combustion engines for a period of time, right? Which is the foreseeable future, right? I don't know of an electric. That's the thing, is like, these aren't for everybody. They're great for me and my situation, or you and yours, where, you might be running in and out of the airport. You might be running into an office somewhere. Like, that's the ideal situation for an EV. It's not, towing 6 snowmobile trailers 5.5 hours up into, central Maine somewhere. It's just not the best use of that, So there always have to be some alternatives to what most people are driving. But people get fired up about this, and instantly the disinformation starts.
Yeah,
right?
It's just like most other things now, has nothing to do with the facts of the situation. Right. It has to do with us versus them, and it's people. They're taking away my guns. Those eggheads up in the north are taking away my guns. Well, okay, let's see. I'm on this side, and they're on that side, and they like electric cars, so I hate them. They're taking away my lifestyle.
Right.
Yeah,
that's exactly right. And I think, ironically, when Ford decided that they were going to build, their strategy has been pretty interesting. It's like, take an existing something that you have as a picture in your head and make that an EV. So the first one was the Mustang Mach-E. It's got nothing to do with the Mustang, but they put the badge on it because people knew what the badge was. And it looked like, wow, this is kind of a radical departure. And what happened was everybody got mad about it.
Well, what do you think? Should they put the badge on? Really?
I don't know. Like, was it a wise marketing decision? I don't know, but it certainly got people talking about the vehicle, right?
Yeah.
They weren't talking about it at all. And now all of a sudden, for that period of time when that thing launched, people were either really interested or really upset about it. So,
Okay.
and they did the same thing with the F-150. It's like, that's a platform people understand, right? 750,000 people a year buy those things. Put an electric motor in it. Is it the best use of an electric motor? Not necessarily, but it's an exercise. Like, we can do this and we can make this a viable vehicle. It's just not going to be used in the same way that you might use a diesel pickup.
All right. Now let's get in. Now that we've established that EVs have a value, and they're working better all the time, they're working well enough so people own them as their only car in some cases. Let's take a look at which ones are better than others. I'll address the Tesla. I am no fan of what's his name, Musk.
Right.
In my opinion, well, this is of course my opinion. I can't watch him on TV. I'm disgusted by the guy.
Right.
For his position on Russia and other things.
Right.
Other things.
There's a lot to not like.
There's a lot to not like. But I try to separate that from, I would never buy a Tesla, no matter how good it is, because of that. However, other people don't care as much. They just want a good car. Like, I couldn't like a band if I didn't like the people in the band. Some people can.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I will give you, and I feel the same way. Like, if it were me, I wouldn't buy the product. 350,000 people a year feel differently than I do, and they're buying Tesla products.
But are they buying it because they like the product, or they're buying it because they like the idea?
I do think so. There's two things going on that really impressed me about Tesla, neither of which have anything to do with the car. The first is they were the manufacturer who took on the North American Dealers Association, who said that if you're going to sell a car in a state, you have to have a franchise automotive dealer in that state. Tesla said, we're not doing that. We're selling direct to the consumer, and we're not a legacy auto manufacturer. So you have no business telling us how we can sell our cars. And they won in multiple courts across the country, which I thought, like, just that direct sales model to me is an improvement. Like, it's competition. And what we're told, in the United States, in a capitalist society, is competition is good for everybody. So to me, a different means of selling a vehicle is a positive. There's really only one way to buy a new car in the United States, and that's through a franchise dealer. Tesla broke that model with their launch, and I thought it was pretty interesting. Now Rivian's doing the same thing. So they don't have an existing dealer network. They'll sell direct to a consumer, which I think is a very interesting way to do this.
So does that make it cheaper? I mean, eliminating the middleman and the middleman's
I don't think
profits?
it necessarily makes it cheaper. I think it, in a lot of ways, it may make it more difficult for the consumer because they don't have a service facility in your town the way your Ford dealer does. So that's the advantage to the Ford dealer. And that's always been the advantage of the franchise system. But, I do think that the whole idea of just taking out that person in the middle who's there solely to sell the product, and they can sell it for any price they want, I think that's just a positive. That's a net positive for the consumer. They walk through the door, they're not getting sold floor mats, they're not getting sold undercoating, they're just buying the car, and they don't negotiate the price.
And you can even buy it online, right? And a truck pulls up.
Yep.
And drops it off.
Serviced. So the one service center is in Watertown. So if your car breaks down, they're going to haul it over there and they'll leave you another car. That's how they get around it. So that works great for me. It doesn't work so great if you live in, Princeton or somewhere.
In Princeton, though, will they drive out and replace the car and then bring it back?
They will, but you're going to wait. I think you're going to wait in those situations.
But you're going to be driving their car in the meantime. That's all right, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So pretty good to me.
The second thing with Tesla that was interesting to me was their charging network. It is the gold standard. You drive the supercharger network is great. You pull in, you can charge, from 10 to 80% in 35, 40 minutes, and you're on your way. They're everywhere. You can plot a trip across the United States. The charging network for every other manufacturer, they've farmed out to a third party, and it works okay. But it's not great. It's not a great experience for customers.
So they really strangle you with the charging points.
Correct.
Interesting.
So, I mean, so this is my experience. Oddly enough, in Portland, Maine, I find a lot more DC fast chargers available than anywhere around here. I can find one anytime up there. They're at car dealers, they're at the supermarket, they're all over the place. Here I live in Metro West out in Holliston. They're sort of few and far between, and there's a dealer not far from me. I was using their charger for a while, and now they're posting a sign out there. Despite the fact that it's a charge point station and I have to pay for it, they won't let me use that charger anymore.
Why?
That dealer has refused to let anybody but people who work at the dealership use the charger, which, come on, it's a charge point.
Okay.
Station,
So electricity is fuel, and it sounds like the way that's set up now is with Tesla is it's like having a gas station that will only sell gas to one type of car.
Correct.
And you think that there would be somebody that would have these stations to sell to everybody, and that's the third party ones?
Correct.
And that's not, I can't believe that's not doing better.
So a Tesla can use the charge point stations, right? But no other manufacturer can use the Tesla stations. It's like this. But so what's happening now is manufacturers now realize how, important that Tesla charging network is. And they're starting to roll out adapters and software updates that allow you to charge at Tesla.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So like Ford now, they just rolled it out last month. Subaru is going to be in 2025. I think most of the manufacturers by that point are going to use the Tesla charging network with an adapter and a software update.
Okay. So those are the two good things. Now, back to, the build, the dependability, the performance. Is anybody creeping up on Tesla, or has anyone surpassed them yet?
I mean, so it's interesting to look at Tesla, which has really only been in business for how long? They sold a Roadster for a while, but nobody bought that. So the Model S came out in 2013 or so, 12, 13. So they've only been in business for 10 years, right? All of these legacy manufacturers have been building cars for 50 years plus.
Right.
They know how to do it.
Right. They know how to build a car.
They do a really good job. They do really well at sort of following how does this car perform in a crash test? How does it perform, reliability wise? Tesla has a lot of issues. They have a lot of fit and finish issues. So a lot of people who bought those cars early on were disappointed with them because they were used to driving a Lexus, which was like the gold standard of automotive quality. And now you go to a car that's kind of half put together, they're getting better. I think the Cybertruck's having some issues now, but I think in general, most people would consider the Tesla to be of lower quality than something like a Kia, oddly enough. Right. So the one that I've driven that I loved was the EV6. The Kia EV6 is a sort of in the same ballpark as like a Model 3 would be. And it drives great.
What's a Model 3?
So that's the Tesla.
Okay.
So that's what they're selling more of than anything. They sell tons of those cars. To me, like I would prefer to purchase from a legacy manufacturer who knows how to build a car. And I will say that despite what I just said about the dealers, it's nice to have a dealer network. So if I have an issue when I'm up in the middle of nowhere somewhere, there's probably a Kia dealer around. There are enough of those around now that you could get it towed there and, have the car straightened out. But, that seems to be something of an advantage too, to have a larger dealer network for service. But I've driven the EV6, the Nero EV, which is very small, but small battery, easy to charge, very nice to drive, super quiet, and also will charge even on a regular 110 outlet. If you're not completely depleted, you could charge that overnight on just a regular outlet, which is the benefit of a smaller battery. Some of these things, like the Hummer the Hummer EV, the battery is massive. They take forever to charge, even on a DC fast charger.
I'm surprised. I haven't heard about Hummers for a long time.
Hmm.
Okay, so if you had to get one, I mean, do you have one? And if you do get one, if you were to get one, what one would you get?
Honestly, I mean, so we've talked about this before. My wife and I are old car drivers. She's driving a 2003 BMW 5 Series with 200,000 miles on it, and that's what we do. But if I was driving the way I was, going from Holliston to Quincy every day, you can't convince me that a gas engine is a better way to go. Than that's a 30 some odd mile commute.
All right. So which one would you get?
Most of the time, I think I'd probably get something like the Nero. Hyundai has one too. The name's escaping me now. Hang on, I'll find it. But they're both the same body style. What is that thing called? They have the Ioniq 5, which is slightly bigger, but they offer these things, like the Nero, for example, is offered in a gas engine, an EV, and a plug-in hybrid. So you can kind of you could drive them all and kind of sample the one you want. The plug-in hybrid seems to work really well. The
Volkswagen has one. You don't like Volkswagens in general. Does that carry through to electric cars?
I haven't driven the ID4. I think in general, you can anticipate greater issues with a Volkswagen than you could with a Hyundai, a Kia, a Toyota. Like, in general, I think, so I don't know, like reliability on their EVs. What
is your general beef that you've had for so long with Volkswagen? Is it an identity issue? Is it the finished car? They're mushy. They don't really have a lot of zip. What is it you don't like?
I always liked their cars. I always thought, the cars that were, when I first started doing this for a living, the cars from 2000, 2002, they offered more for the same money than any other manufacturer. So that the interiors were nicer, the design was nicer.
Yeah.
However, there was always something broken on those cars. Every single one that I ever drove for a period of time, there was always something broken. So like, I had heated seat switches melted into the full-on position. I had fuses blown. I had a transmission go out on a car with that was an Audi, but same Volkswagen Audi, very similar. I never had a transmission go out on anything that I've driven. This is the only vehicle I've ever, driven that a transmission went bad on.
I rented a Tiguan, one of the newer, and I drove it 1,400 miles in 4 days, and I loved it. But of course, I didn't have to. I just could take it back. I didn't have to worry about it breaking.
So my mom had a Beetle she leased for 3 years. Perfectly fine. We did own so I told you my experience driving Volkswagen press cars was not great. That did not prevent me from buying a 2005 or 6, I can't remember, Volkswagen Jetta wagon. It was It was nice. It was kind of a low trim. It had a 5-speed manual. Really loved it on paper. Hated that car owning it. Like just never liked it. Never
How
bonded
come?
with it. I don't know. I
Don't
don't know.
know.
Well, first of all, I will tell you the 2-liter burned oil like it was going out of style.
Really?
Nobody knew where it was going. And it was like every time we'd bring it to the dealer, it's like in 3,000 miles, this thing's a quart low. It's
Wow.
not leaking anywhere. And you're telling me that it's not burning out the tailpipe. Where is the oil going? And the dealer every time would be like, that's, it's kind of within spec. And we heard that from a bunch of 2-liter owners. So at that point with that car, I was like, yeah, I don't think I'll ever own a Volkswagen.
I know. I have a friend who's a Volkswagen fanatic.
Yep. People love them. I mean, I walked in to that vehicle. I was convinced that for the money they offered a better car than most other. They offered.
You've had a lot of experience with them. It's bad experience.
And I just didn't. We just didn't like it. Neither one of us did. It was just.
All right. So we have established that EVs do really make a difference, a big, big, big difference when it comes to keeping the environment clean and trying to actually save life on Earth. I have one more question that's unrelated to that, though, and this is, I've asked you this before, and I don't think I've gotten a satisfactory answer.
You may not today.
So, say you have a Mustang, like the one in the green fastback, British Green Racing fastback.
Oh, Bullet.
Bullet. Okay. Say you had that model. Why can't a car company make one exactly the same shape, body style, and just make it out of modern materials and stuff it with modern stuff? Why not have the exact same looking car? Take out the prints, the molds, or whatever you do,
right,
and make exact size, exact shape, not kind of like it, but exactly externally, and then stuff it full of modern stuff.
Modern components, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it won't pass a crash test. That's number one. Like, that body style.
I see the frame.
They're great. Yeah. I mean, body on frame, with little in the way of things like crumple zones and, that kind of thing. Like you can sort of, I suppose you could engineer that, but the cost to do that would be prohibitive, right? So if you were going to develop a brand new automobile, you would have to know that you would sell 500,000 of those a year, and that style of vehicle just doesn't sell anymore. So they offer a Mustang now, and nobody buys it. I mean, that's sort of right from the get-go. That's the first issue.
So you couldn't just take the outer shell, and because the outer shell shape does not include room for crumple zones, etc. Couldn't build it in. You could do it, but it would take way too much money.
The Mustang is, it's a body shell without the nose on it, right? So it's the firewall back to the rear, the rear valence. That sits on a ladder frame with 4 or 6 or whatever mounting points, that bolt that to the frame. There's nothing in that structure that's aimed at safety. Like they weren't even thinking about that.
Okay.
In 1964, when they developed that car, like there weren't even requirements. So federal motor vehicle safety standards didn't come in until 1968.
Okay.
So prior to that, cars were just for aesthetics.
I get it. Now I get it. Now I understand. Thank you. I feel so much better.
So go buy yourself a new Mustang that you've been talking about for the last.
No. If I were going to get a new car, I wouldn't get a Mustang.
What would you get now?
Oh man, I haven't. Usually for years when I was doing radio with you, I'd have it in my head. I'd always be thinking, I would get this, so I'd always have an answer at the ready. But what would I get now? Geez.
Like, how much driving are you doing now?
Not, it would be ridiculous for me to have a car.
Right.
I have driven 3 times in the last 6 months.
Right.
So it'd be just sitting there. I'd be paying insurance and everything.
So this is kind of my thing with EVs is I think they're great. And I also, it's the same issue that we have talked about before with autonomous cars. I don't think you need either one of those things if you're driving 2,500 miles a year.
No.
I haven't driven to work since the pandemic, right? I got laid off the week before the pandemic really hit, and I haven't driven to an office since then. So in 3 years, my mileage has gone from 12,500, your average mileage, down to 4,000 miles a year strictly for recreation. And I think a lot of people are in the same boat now.
Go ahead.
I think that the states, the federal government, like, they're focused on the EVs and the autonomous cars. Well, what they should be doing is focusing on how do we keep people from driving into these cities every day. The city of Boston had it figured out. They wanted to go to carbon neutral by 2050. And the pandemic hit, and it was like, wow, all of a sudden this is doable, right? That was Governor Baker's initiative to get us to carbon neutral by 2050. And all of a sudden nobody's driving into Boston. And like, this is an unbelievable experiment to see how things change. And then within 6 months, we were back to doing exactly what
it was interesting. Boston became like a wild, like bear and moose were coming into Boston, and grass was growing everywhere.
Yeah,
it was like Chernobyl, how it returned to nature. I'm exaggerating. I drive so little that I kind of have forgotten how to do it. I'm really good on the highway, but in Boston, I don't have the confidence I used to have. My God, I got to get in the right lane. Oh no, there's a bus lane only. Oh, that's a bike lane. And you're in a bus lane only. Then you're not. Then you are. And what do you do?
I know, it's very confusing now and there. And I think that actually during the pandemic, it was like, well, let's change this all now, so that nobody has to deal with it day by day. And when they all come back, they'll have to figure this out, But I wish.
Well, some cities charge money to come into town.
Right. London's doing that. New York's doing that. Like, is that enough to change people's behavior? It wasn't with cigarettes. I mean, I guess it is. People smoke fewer cigarettes than they used to, but they're $10 a pack now. You would think that nobody would be doing it. But
good catch on fewer and less on the cigarettes.
Yeah.
Fewer cigarettes. You can tell you're a writer. Okay. Right. We're going to be done now, but you mentioned something that might be a good topic for the future. Recently, you helped a friend go through a buying experience on a cool muscle car. Maybe next time we do this, you can walk us through the do's and don'ts and the best way to navigate the hell that can be buying a car.
Yeah, absolutely. That's our mutual friend Lydia.
Yeah,
she was in desperate need of a car, and we figured it out for her in an amazingly short period of time.
I'd like to go test drive cars, but I know the crap they pull, and you get calls every couple of days from calling you back. Well, why don't you come back? It's not worth it. It's too bad. It's like. I think it's a bad idea because I don't feel comfortable going there. I'm not going to buy your thing, whatever.
So Lydia and we'll save this for another, but this is a sneak preview. We bought her a car. I met her at 5:30 on a Wednesday night, and she left in an hour and a half, including the test drive, like ready to go. Like, there were no calls afterwards. There was no sales pitch from the guy about the ceramic paint treatment or anything like that. Like, she was done in 90 minutes.
You mean just test driving, not buying?
No, purchase.
Well,
done.
Of course, I'm talking about just test driving, but okay. An hour and a half, it was easy. They didn't mess around with her head on how much she gets for a trade-in or this or that, but
I'm going to tell you exactly how.
Would they have if you went there, though? Yes.
No. I'm gonna. We're. If you want to talk about this now, I'll talk about this.
No,
now.
let's save it.
If we're gonna save it, I think that's great. I will explain to you how you buy a car, how you test drive as many cars as you want, and nobody's ever gonna bother you.
Oh God!
All right.
Well, yeah, that's a good that's a good promo right there.
Yep. I think it was an eye-opening process for me, and I think she walked away from it elated because
Good.
she had in her head this is going to be weeks and weeks of work, and we were in and out like you wouldn't believe.
Wow, that's great.
And it wasn't because of me. It wasn't because of me.
But she probably thinks it is.
I'll let her think that.
Yeah. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, Craig Fitzgerald, automotive writer, currently writing for the Subaru outfit. What's the official title
Subaru
again?
Drive Magazine.
I'll have to try to work on memorizing that. Subaru Drive Magazine. Subaru Drive Magazine. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this is an interesting topic, and you should share this. Craig, share it. I'll share it. Let's all share it. It turns out electric vehicles do make a difference. Hooray. I'll talk to you soon, Craig.
Always great to talk to you. Thanks, Bradley.
Okay, don't leave because I'm just going to not be live, but I'm not going